Within Elkhart County, Black children only account for 7% of our student body, but they account for 41% of incarcerated children.
So, el 7% de niños afroamericanos escolares se convierten en el 41% juveniles que entran a la cárcel.
So folks understand that the data that I'm referencing, our county, Elkhart County, received what's called an OJJDP grant. It's a juvenile justice grant. We received this grant, and we are only one of 2 counties in the entire state that received this grant. So out of 92 counties, y'all, there's only 2 of us that got this grant. And the whole intention of this grant is to look into the juvenile system and see how it's functioning. And so
el condado de Elkhart les entregaron como un tipo beca para administrar a los jóvenes o juveniles. La razón por cual es que están entrando tantos al sistema de cárcel, o sea, ¿por qué es que están llegando tantos jóvenes a la cárcel? Okay. So, los estudiaron del inicio escolar, o sea, cuando empezaron la escuela, hasta el punto de llegar a la cárcel. Lo que los datos han demostrado que las razones por cuál viene siendo por prejuicios, discriminación y cegada. Como esto no salió como el Estado esperó, cerraron. O sea, esto ya es como un experimento, fue un experimento, no les funcionó como quisieron, así es que lo van a cerrar. Y no van a entregar más dinero para ayudar a los niños o a los jóvenes más de lo necesario.
the data doesn't lie. It's real raw data. It's looking at a child that goes into the juvenile system. How did they get there? What were the touch points on the way, right? How did they get the initial referral? And so what they uncovered in the data is that the majority of the referrals to the juvenile system in Elkhart County are coming from Elkhart Community Schools. And a local parent advocate that specifically looks at racial disparities came and spoke at Elkhart school board meeting. And she called them out about the data and said, this data is coming out of your school system. Elkhart Schools is the predominant contributor to this. How are you going to help remedy this now that you have knowledge?
I am here today because I am concerned about the lack of communication and accountability surrounding the findings of the Elkhart County Tenured Site System Assessment Report and what those findings mean for Black youth in Elkhart Community Schools. In December 2025, I sent a letter to district leadership after reviewing data that showed concerning disparities affecting Black students. I asked what steps the district was taking to address those disparities, how restorative and trauma-informed practices were being implemented, and what anti-bias training staff would receive to address the root causes identified in the report. I asked how the new administration intended to address the findings. Again, I have received no response. Instead, communication came from legal counsel. Respectfully, I am not asking for legal advice. I am asking questions about children. I am asking questions about educational outcomes. I am asking questions about a report that identifies disparities impacting Black students in your school district. I am a parent advocate. I have clients in this school district. I also filed a complaint regarding the superintendent's failure to communicate with me. To date, I have received no response from your board about my complaint. My frustration is not personal. My frustration is that when data identifies harm and community members seek answers, silence sends a message. It sends a message to families that their concerns are not valued. It sends a message to students that disparities reflected in the data are not urgent.
Literally, their superintendent said, I don't know what data you're talking about. This has been going on for years. So when we circled back to the source, who, has been managing the grant and the data and all the things, they literally confirmed that every single superintendent from all 7 districts was invited to be a part of this. So if Elkhart's superintendent
says, I don't know.
says, I don't know what you're talking about. It's been going on for years, buddy. In the data, they were supposed to propose a plan, like a comprehensive plan, and they did. But from my understanding is that's it. The plan was proposed. Phase 2 would be to implement the plan, right? They don't want to do the implementation. And so even though we have the evidence now to show that our system here in Elkhart County is biased and prejudiced and pumping children through a system that they may never get out of, massive systemic harm and abuse, especially when you can prove that the point of referral is a point of bias and discrimination by the schools and the police. So we know this, but nobody's doing anything about it.
So it sounds like this was just almost an experiment that backfired.
Ooh, yes, but we were given it on a platter and it ain't going nowhere, I'll tell you that. Because
The Hispanic and the Black race was going in more than any other race.
that's what was uncovered in our data, and that's what they're trying to cover up. And so the data revealed not only the bias and discrimination at point of referral, it showed the bias and discrimination at point of sentencing. And so
So lo que dice ella es que en el sistema, cuando los juveniles entran a los sistemas del estado de Indiana para que los meten en un instituto para mejorarse, cuando salgan de esa institución deben de salir mejor. Pero lo que está pasando es que no es así. Están, o sea,
Want to take a seat? We could get going.
do I have to be on video?
Up to you.
God.
Up to you. I mean, it would be good,
I feel
no?
like they want to know who's
The voice, I'll face to
translating.
the voice. I'm shy too.
We're just talking to each other.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm shy too.
Same, yeah. I'm a hermit crab. I don't. Okay.
This is,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Sounds good. I never get past the intro. It's like,
I'm so nervous. I'm shaking. Oh my God.
you're good, you're good.
You got me so nervous. Okay.
All right.
Where are we looking?
Yeah.
Okay.
To each other and the camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
All right.
Yeah, and then when we speak, we can look at each other or at the camera. So.
Okay.
Alrighty, what's up? It's your boy Felix coming straight from the 574 Elkhart, E-Town, the city with a heart. And today we have a very important episode. We have 2 speakers with us today. It's a very important episode. It's relating to child safety, inequalities within systems, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Brad. Hi guys, my name is Rachel Van Alstine and I am a local child and parent advocate and activist, both locally in Elkhart County and across the state.
My name is Loretta Cisneros. I'm an interpreter. I'm just here to interpret some key points. Mi nombre es Lorena, soy intérprete. Simplemente voy a interpretar los puntos claves que va a hablar ella.
Yeah, and Rachel, I got to know you at a child safety meeting here in Elkhart, where you guys spoke about data that is regarding school systems, that's in regard to our state, data that was only available when you guys shared it, but on the federal level, it's being repressed.
Correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about that data and why it's being repressed on a federal level?
Yeah, so we have been advocating both locally and at the state level for about 4 years in different areas of child safety. And essentially, it started because our children were being bullied. And so in us attempting to protect our own children, we've had to really take this to different levels because of the hierarchy that exists that we honestly had no idea until we tried to protect our children. And so with that process, what we uncovered were massive gaps in child safety between systems. So between schools, the Department of Child Services, child welfare, the juvenile system, the family court system, the healthcare system, it truly all trickles. And there's an impact across the board and we see it bleed. And so with that, we uncovered this massive disparity in how behaviors are being handled. And so what we uncovered is that schools are not addressing behaviors appropriately. And because they're not addressing the behaviors appropriately, multiple things are happening. A silencing culture has been created to where while they're saying on the outside there's like zero tolerance for bullying, our children are reporting bullying and they're being suppressed, or it's not being documented. And so that creates its own culture and environment because essentially you're taking our children's voices and you're desensitizing them to abuse and neglect. That's what you're doing in that process. And so with that, because it's not being addressed properly, that's where we have kiddos like Rio that died by suicide because the bullying was not being addressed appropriately. And because of that, she died. I mean, and that was preventable, you know, like the student body knew, the teachers knew, the school knew, the board knew, they did nothing. And because of that, she died. So there's this massive piece here that we can tie to youth suicide, which is the second leading cause of death for youth. The other side of this is the child that is perpetuating these abusive behaviors, right? That child is also not getting what they need because they're not getting the appropriate response. Typically, schools are responding with suspension, expulsion, ISS, things that are punitive. You're not getting to the root cause of why is this child abusive? Why is this child bullying? And because they're not addressing the behaviors, what we've uncovered on this end are those children are ending up in the school to prison pipeline. Not only are those children, but we have many instances also of the child that was a victim actually ending up in the school to prison pipeline because of self-defense. Because a lot of times schools have a zero tolerance policy for fighting. Like again, they have these policies, but they're shit. They're on paper. They're not in practice. They're not in practice as to what this would really mean. And so because of that, these kids are ending up in the juvenile system. So you have a kiddo that has been bullied for years. The child is not aggressive, and we have many instances like this. Child is not aggressive, no behavioral issues, but has been bullied for years. That child snaps, gets into it with their bully, or the bully took it too far and that child had to defend themselves. And because the school district has a zero tolerance policy for fighting, even though if they really had a zero tolerance policy for bullying, this could have been prevented. But because now because they have a zero tolerance policy for fighting, both those kids are arrested, both those kids are sent to the juvenile system, and a child that's been a victim and abused under their care, under their watch, under their knowledge for years is now in a juvenile system because they didn't address behaviors. Right. And so you talk about it bleeding, you know, and so I know that's a hell of a lot, but I think that if you could summarize any of that, no.
Oh, wow.
Well, just I think it's important for Spanish families to understand what's happening if their children are experiencing being bullied or being suspended and you're put in detention or ISS and what that means. Like, what is the real root cause?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for us to really break down what bullying is, because when you say the word bullying, I feel like it's such a blanket statement and you don't really get to the heart of what it is. And the heart of what it is bullying is the physical, emotional, verbal, sometimes sexual, sometimes cyber abuse. It is abuse of children by other children.
Right.
Just because a child is perpetuating this does not make it any less abuse.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to do some of these things as an adult that these kids are doing to each other, I would catch charges.
Right.
It is abuse. And so we have to look at it through that lens instead of saying, oh, it's just bullying, it's a rite of passage, deal with it. We're beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You have now created a horrific culture because of that bullshit.
Right.
Because of that.
Right.
You've created a culture where abuse is allowed to exist because of that dismissiveness right there.
Right.
And so at that point, in understanding what bullying is, it is abuse. And because of that, by law, it is required in the state of Indiana that if a child or a parent or anyone reports a bullying incident, they have to do an investigation and they have to contact both parents within 5 business days. So they are really supposed to be digging into this. Because it's abuse in their care. Even though some of this may be stirring from home, which we know is a factor, it's happening in y'all's walls, on your watch, in your care. And guess what? If it were happening in my home, in my walls, in my care, I'd have DCS at my door. So why is DCS not at the door of these school systems that are covering up the abuse and neglect of our children?
Okay, so I would definitely like to I would like to interpret that part. So when a parent or child report bullying within the school, an investigation must be done. Both parents must be informed within 5 business days. Anything else you want me to say on that?
I think it's important to understand. I mean, if you want to explain that first, there's a loophole that I want parents to be aware of, but if you want to.
So, una de las cosas que comentó ella es que cuando los padres o los hijos reportan a un matón o bully, la escuela tiene que hacer una investigación del reporte, igual tiene que notificar a los 2 padres dentro 5 días laborales.
Okay. So essentially, one loophole that we found that they use, there's 2 that I'll touch on. So one of them is schools will say that it's not bullying, that it's conflict, and that is a loophole. And so they'll say,
una de las cosas que también usan como excusa las escuelas es que le llaman lo que es el bullying, le llaman conflicto.
And so with that, what they're saying is that this is just a conflict between 2 peers. They have equal power, if you
Están
will.
diciendo, esto es conflicto con 2 partes, los 2 tienen la misma poder,
Which we know does occur.
cual entendemos que esto ocurre.
However, what we found
Ahora lo que nosotros encontramos
is that the majority of the time there is an imbalance of power.
hay una imbalance, en poder.
And there has been an aggressor
Y han tenido un agresor
and a victim.
y una víctima.
But the school will chalk it up to just a disagreement, a conflict, and then they don't have to do this.
So, entonces lo que la escuela hace es lo llama como un conflicto, un desacuerdo, y por esa razón entonces decide la escuela, no tenemos que reportarlo.
And this is something you and I actually worked on together because Loretta and I met working with a local Spanish family, and the mother did not speak English. And so Loretta was the translator, and what we uncovered was her 15-year-old son being horribly bullied by a group of boys. And the thing about this that is even more compounded, that's concerning, is that while this boy was 15, he had an IEP, which is an individual education plan, because he had an intellectual disability and he only had the mental capacity of like a 9 or 10-year-old.
Y esto igual lo hemos pasado simplemente pues, porque hemos interpretado, pues yo he asistido en una interpretación con Rachel, con un niño en una de las escuelas de este distrito que tiene 15 años, donde él fue hecho bully por unas partes, otros estudiantes en la escuela. Ahora, lo que pasa es que la diferencia es que el niño de 15 años tiene un IEP, tiene servicios especiales en la escuela y tiene la mentalidad de un niño de, vamos a decir, 9 años. Pero la otra persona, el bully, esa persona tenía la capacidad de un niño de 15 años. O sea, están de la misma edad, simplemente el otro niño estaba haciendo bully a un niño que no tenía la misma capacidad mental que el bully.
It's interesting that you share that the schools or the district sees it as like these children have equal balance of power. Whereas if you want to go that way and compare it to adults, but they're adults. Even in workplaces, there's HR for harassment or bullying, where they'll step in and help dissolve or de-escalate the situation. These are children learning, spending 8 hours of their day daily at school, but they want to go down the path of they have equal balance of power, they can resolve it by themselves, or what kind of way, why is it seen that way? Like what kind of
it's really unsettling if you just step back a little bit, because again, the people that are making these kind of decisions and practices and implications are educators. And you should be well versed in child development and know that a child's mind is not fully developed till the age of 26, and that's without trauma. And so why are you placing these adult actions upon a child? And that's something that actually came up in our child safety meeting that you attended, that's important to touch on, because one thing that she referenced in her presentation was that if a child enters a state system, they should come out on the other side better. Like it's actually the law. And not only that, is that in juvenile code, a juvenile act is a delinquent act, not a criminal act. So why is the state of Indiana, why is Elkhart County pumping out a school to prison pipeline like nobody's business? They have turned delinquent child behaviors into criminal acts. That's what we're witnessing. That's what this is. Even though the code says that this is not a criminal act, it's a delinquent act. So why are you attaching criminality to it to put this child through this system if they're not going to come out better? And we know damn well they don't come out better.
So lo que dice ella es que en el sistema, cuando los juveniles entran a los sistemas del estado de Indiana para que los meten en un instituto para mejorarse, cuando salgan de esa institución deben de salir mejor. Pero lo que está pasando es que no es así. Están estos juveniles cuando cometen errores o delincuencias, vamos a decir, lo deben de reconocer como una delincuencia. Pero, al contrario, aquí en el estado de Indiana, igual, el condado de aquí de Elkhart lo está reconociendo como cosas de crimen. Solo están reportándolo como crimen y es por eso que están entrando más juveniles a las cárceles de aquí del condado de Elkhart y es lo que está abogando ella. O sea, no debe de haber razón por cual una delincuencia de un juvenil se está, se está reportando como un crimen en vez de la forma, o sea, no lo están reportando como se debe y está causando más problemas con los jóvenes aquí en este condado y están entrando más al sistema de las cárceles de este condado.
Yeah, friends, there's so much here with this because it is so intricate, and I think it's important for families to understand that this is not a fluke thing, that the system is designed this way, and that they are well aware that it is designed this way. We actually met with...
So, desafortunadamente, así no es diseñado este sistema, pero así es como lo trabajan.
So myself and a few mothers were able to meet with two different prosecutors, which was really interesting. And so we met with a prosecutor in St. Joe County, and we met with a prosecutor in Elkhart County. And we were talking about the school to prison pipeline and this data that has come out in our county that we presented, that you mentioned. And so essentially, so before I get into that, I guess, so folks understand that the data that I'm referencing, our county, Elkhart County, received what's called an OJJDP grant. It's a juvenile justice grant. We received this grant, and we are only one of two counties in the entire state that received this grant. So out of 92 counties, y'all, there's only two of us that got this grant. And the whole intention of this grant is to look into the juvenile system and see how it's functioning. And so we have been able to dive into our local data here. And again, this is being done by an impartial third party. And like Elkhart County, you know, organizations had to agree to like participate in this, and they initially did. And so they have been like going through our data as far as the path of a child. So from school into the system, what does that look like? Like what are these what are the points here?
Coming out.
Yes. And so our data, y'all, our data is damning because what it unveils is massive bias and discrimination, both by race and both by socioeconomic status. And so the data doesn't lie. It's real raw data. It's looking at a child that goes into the juvenile system. How did they get there? What were the touch points on the way, right? How did they get the initial referral? And so what they uncovered in the data is that the majority of the referrals to the juvenile system in Elkhart County are coming from Elkhart Community Schools. So that is where the majority of the referrals are coming from for children that are that are within the juvenile system. And so there's a part here in the data where they can actually show bias and discrimination at point of referral. And point of referral is primarily schools and police. So our data in Elkhart County for our youth shows that there is bias and discrimination at point of referral, which are schools and our police.
So, okay, so you said that this grant was only for Elkhart County,
We got the grant to be able to do this data work, correct?
but only in Elkhart.
And one other county, but I don't recall the
Okay.
other county.
So once you guys did get your data only reflected Elkhart students?
Elkhart County. So we actually have 7 school districts in Elkhart
Mhm.
County, but it showed that the majority that are going into the system are coming from Elkhart Community Schools.
And not the other schools that?
Well, I mean, there's contributions, but not at the rate of Elkhart schools.
Okay.
And you have to think of demographics too. So whose children are going into the system?
So are we saying that then the Hispanic and the Black race was going in more than any other race?
That's what was uncovered in our data, and that's what they're trying to cover up. And so the data revealed not only the bias and discrimination at point of referral, it showed the bias and discrimination at point of sentencing. And so whose children are getting the deferral programs versus whose children are not getting those programs? Whose children are going into the system versus getting the deferrals, right? And so they found bias at point of referral and point of sentencing. And at point of sentencing, it was very clear, specifically within Elkhart County, Black children only account for 7% of our student body, but they account for 41% of incarcerated children.
That's
How?
a lot.
7%.
How? Black kids, if you're a Black parent, y'all already know.
Right,
Y'all
right.
already know, but the data proved it, y'all. And I think that that's what's important is the data proved everything we knew, everything we felt, but it proved it. What's concerning with it is when this data was presented to the leaders in our community, they said, shut that shit down. Shut it down. Like, we do not want, why has nobody heard of this? Right? Like, why has nobody heard of this data? We even presented,
Can this data be made public?
yeah, it is.
Oh, and where can people find this information?
And so if somebody's interested, I can, like, I have, the data, I can send it, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you were involved in this, our county, if you will, like county leaders are not, from what I understand, going to do the next phase. So essentially this was supposed to be done in phases. And just to be clear as well, this wasn't my data in any way. This data was actually done through the source, which is a part of Oaklawn. I've just been, in the mix of it and through the years that it's been happening. And so essentially this was supposed to be done in phases to improve the outcomes of children. That was the point. But what we did is we said, oh, holy shit, our system is really fucked. And we have a massive, disparities in our community of bias and prejudice from state institutions and state systems. How do we fix it? And they were like, oh no.
Cover too much.
Like that would take too much to do, right? And so, because essentially from the data, they were supposed to propose a plan, like a comprehensive plan, and they did. But from my understanding that's it. The plan was proposed. Phase 2 would be to implement the plan, right? They don't want to do the implementation. And so even though we have the evidence now to show that our system here in Elkhart County is biased and prejudiced and pumping children through a system that they may never get out of, massive systemic harm and abuse, especially when you can prove that the point of referral is a point of bias and discrimination by the schools and the police. So we know this, but nobody's doing anything about it.
So it sounds like this was just almost an experiment that backfired.
Ooh, yes, but we were given it on a platter and it ain't going nowhere. I'll tell you that. Because, we have it on a platter, y'all. That's what I'm saying. We have the evidence now. Because you guys have to think, like, why aren't we already tracking this data? Why did we have to get a grant to find out that this is the true systemic functioning of our youth?
So let me try to interpret this little, summarize as much as I can, this little data part. So lo que ella está hablando So, el condado de Elkhart les entregaron como un tipo beca para administrar a los jóvenes o juveniles. La razón por cual es que están entrando tantos al sistema de cárcel, o sea, ¿por qué es que están llegando tantos jóvenes a la cárcel? Okay. So, los estudiaron del inicio escolar, o sea, cuando empezaron la escuela, hasta el punto de llegar a la cárcel. Lo que los datos han demostrado que las razones por cual viene siendo por prejuicios, discriminación y cegada. Y esas son las razones primarias cuando fueron referidos para los servicios, o sea, al tratar de entender por qué es lo que está pasando con esos juveniles. Esas fueron las 3 razones principales que entraron en la referencia. Ahora, una cosa que comentó ella, que de estos juveniles, el 41% de ellos son afroamericanos. O sea, ese porcentaje...
7%. From like 7% of them making up, right? They make up 7%.
Mm-hmm. So they make up...
And then 40% of the juvenile.
41.
So
Black children only account for 7% of our entire student body, but they account for 41% of of children in the juvenile system.
So el 7% de niños afroamericanos escolares se convierten en el 41% juveniles que entran a la cárcel.
So that's crazy because like less than 1 out of 10 kids are Black, but yet 4 out of 10 are the ones in juvenile system or in
it tracks,
system.
Right? Like it tracks in everything that we know of our community, that we know of the history of Elkhart. Like there is something happening in our local community here, and this is a dark underbelly that we have to look at, and it's not going to go away.
Y otra cosa que comentó ella, perdón que se me olvidó comentar, es que estos datos están disponibles. Simplemente que tienes que involucrarte en buscar y entender lo que está pasando con el sistema. Dice ella que ella puede entregarte los datos si gustas ver quiénes son los que son discriminados, que vienen haciendo los afroamericanos y los hispanos. La mayoría de ellos. Pero esta información, o sea, se debe de divulgar en una forma, o sea, donde libremente, pero como esto no salió como el Estado esperó, cerraron. O sea, esto ya es como un experimento, fue un experimento, no les funcionó como quisieron, así es que lo van a cerrar y no van a entregar más dinero para ayudar a los niños o a los jóvenes más de lo necesario.
Do you have you did say that the data was available, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can email it to you,
Okay.
and we can actually link it in this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have like a specific like website or anything?
No,
Okay.
it was the way that it was done essentially they were pulling the data and putting together this comprehensive plan, and so the way that they presented it was in like PowerPoint presentations.
Got it.
And so that's what I have access to,
Okay.
is the actual, like what she shared. So we were able to watch a presentation of it. That's their actual presentation that I can share with you.
Oh,
That you can
that's
share.
great.
Yeah, so we can share the presentation.
And I believe she has it in Spanish too,
Yep,
right?
we can share it in Spanish and English. Yep.
Wow, that is so alarming. Like literally the state of Indiana gave money to 2 counties.
Two county. Well, it's a juvenile justice, but yeah,
Okay.
through the state.
Gave grants for them to investigate and do research on the youth, and when the results came, they said, we have a plan, but we're not going to implement it.
That's my understanding. And it's like, why hasn't the community heard about it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why hasn't there been a community meeting? We, the parents, are the ones that came together and put on the community meeting to share the data. Our leaders didn't. Like, so that's alarming because our leaders know, the head of the juvenile justice, our mayor, the prosecutor, they were all there when the data was presented. Like, I don't know if the mayor was there. I know the head of the juvenile was and the prosecutor was and other city leaders, but I know that the mayor is aware. So again, all of our leaders are aware of this data. Where is the community meeting to talk about the data, right? And like one thing that's alarming, there was a school board meeting through Elkhart schools just a few months ago, and a local parent advocate that specifically looks at racial disparities came and spoke at Elkhart school board meeting. And she called them out about the data and said, this data is coming out of your school system. Elkhart Schools is the predominant contributor to this. How are you going to help remedy this now that you have knowledge? And literally their superintendent said, I don't know what data you're talking about. This has been going on for years. Mm-hmm. So when we circled back to the source, who, you know, has been managing the grant and the data and all the things, they literally confirmed that every single superintendent from all 7 districts was invited to be a part of this. So if Elkhart's superintendent
says, I don't know.
says, I don't know what you're talking about. It's been going on for years, buddy. Like, and you were invited. So why aren't you at the table when your school system is pumping kids into a school to prison pipeline? Why aren't you at the table? Why haven't you dug into the data?
This should anger all of the parents out there.
It really should, because our children are at risk, because the leaders know how our children are being treated within these systems and how they're not. And so one thing...
So real quickly, lo que ella está hablando es de nuevo, es al tocante, y lo nombré anteriormente como una beca, y no es beca, se llama una subprevención. Eso se fue entregado a el condado de Elkhart. So dice ella, este experimento que se hizo con los juveniles, le preguntaron al superintendente, mira, ¿qué está pasando? O sea, se entregó este dinero, ahora, ¿qué estás haciendo tú, o sea, para ayudar a los juveniles? Y el superintendente avisó, yo no sé de qué estás hablando. O sea, como dice, y tiene esto ya años que empezó, pero el superintendente pretendió como que no estaba, o sea, que él no sabía nada de la situación. Y eso estamos hablando de la persona que se encarga de todas las escuelas, o sea, todos los distritos escolares en tu área. Eso es algo demasiado importante saber.
And at this meeting, something, the child safety meeting in Elkhart, something that stood out was the lack of fathers there. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people did share, a lot of women shared that the parents have a big part in building that foundation for their children. Although obviously when they spend 8 hours daily at school, that has an influence and effect as well. But at that meeting, there was dominantly women and mothers, and the kids are the future, and they're our legacy as parents. And we say we want the best for them, but I know that work can become overwhelming. I know that there's other things that we see as more important, but what more important than our family and children, and it's like from the sound of it, guys, like board meetings, school board meetings, local community meetings regarding child safety, these are things where we should be involved to be able to learn, become knowledgeable, make connections, realize that we're not alone and that there are other parents going through similar situations, other parents going through situations where they're not being paid attention to by the school that we are entrusting our kids to. And it's very angering, listening and hearing all this data, and how it's ignored by the superintendent. And it makes at least me want to uprise, gather other parents, because these are our kids, and especially minorities, we just heard 7% of Black kids, make up the youth, but yet they make up 41% of the juvenile, statistics. But yeah, parents, fathers, these things matter. Our kids matter.
Unfortunately, I can't give my perspective because I don't know the Elkhart School District as well as you guys do. I mean, I'm from South Bend and, and like I said.
But I'm sure it's similar.
Oh, I'm very sure it is. And, but I didn't experience it so extreme. And this is, like he said, it's,
Yeah,
It's
Elkhart,
bad.
we are our own,
it's bad.
we are our own facet here for sure. Like the way that we move, I've been a social worker in this community for decades, and everyone will tell you Elkhart is its own breed, and we really are, because we got a lot of fucking money here, y'all. Elkhart is a very wealthy community. We have a community foundation with billions of dollars that is supposed to serve the well-being of children in Elkhart County, but yet this is the state of our children. Make it make sense. How are we one of the wealthiest counties in the entire state and have billions of dollars in a community foundation to serve Elkhart children only, and this is the state of our children? So one thing, to question here is the intentionality of this within our community. Because if we have a robust school to prison pipeline, guess what, y'all? We can fill these RV factories all day. We are a laboring community. So you are securing your workforce by putting whose children into this system to guarantee you have a workforce. It is all correlated, because whose children are going into these systems? Black and brown children, and children that come from poverty or working class families. And don't get it twisted. This is not just people in poverty. These are working class families whose children that this is happening to. And so one thing I did want to share, because it was really powerful for us. So we were able to meet with a prosecutor in St. Joe County and a prosecutor in Elkhart County. Neighboring counties, y'all, we're right next door in case you don't know. So we met with one prosecutor and we said, we have a plan to create an alternate pathway to stop criminalizing children, because that is something we do as we work on legislation at the state level to hold systems accountable that are abusive to our children. And so we have created legislation that would stop this from happening. And we can create an alternate pathway to where if there is a child that has behavioral issues, and say parent is doing everything they can, but kiddo has a lot going on, instead of criminalizing that kid or that parent catching a case, we can create an alternate pathway. It's called a Chin 6, and it is through DCS, but no case is substantiated. You don't catch a case that's detrimental to your background, your history, in order to get the resources that you need. When we presented this to one of the prosecutors, they said, if you get the state of Indiana to do that, I will do that all day, because I put so many children through the juvenile system, and I quote, so I can reach the parent. literally making that hand gesture, y'all. I put so many children through the juvenile system so I can reach the parent. So you are admittingly criminalizing children to get to the parent. Why is that a fucking process at all? Go right to the parent. Why are we, even though it's the child's behavior, again, you're criminalizing the child. You're not making it a delinquent act. You're criminalizing that child. And when I used that word, one of the prosecutors got really upset and said that it was not criminalization. But it is. Let it be your child and you'll think differently.
Mhm.
And so what's interesting, that's what one prosecutor said. Came right next door to the other county, presented the same exact legislation and said, look, we can stop the school to prison pipeline because we know that there are children that never get out of it. And they said, it'll cost too much time and money, I'm not doing it.
These are lives.
These are
It's too
children's
much
lives.
money.
Yeah. We were in shock. We were like, even if it would only save one child, that is one child. And this prosecutor is point blank saying, nope, too much time and money, I'm not doing that. No, because you got a whole school to prison pipeline pumping here. You got a whole labor force that you're creating by doing this. Because again, we know that a lot of our, specifically young men, that end up in our trailer factories and laboring, like manufacturing, many of them have criminal history. And they bank on that. It becomes predatory. Because they know that they don't have other avenues, right? So you're securing, one, a cheap labor force. Because if you have a criminal history, you have less options, right? And so you are securing a cheap labor force because guess what? I can't get a job making $30 an hour because I got a felony, so I got to work here for 15.
Mhm.
Even though the felony is because when I was 16, I got moved up and charged as an adult at 18 because when I was younger, I got caught for curfew, but then I got caught stealing some stuff at a gas station, and now I'm charged as literally, once you go in as a child, it could be the damnedest thing. You make another impulsive decision, and then you're an adult all of a sudden, which we see that all the time. And so what's interesting, y'all, is I was able to meet with one of the local juvenile judges. And when I presented all of this to him, and I presented the state bullying data, and the state bullying data, that's a link I would also like us to put for parents, if you can make a note so we remember. But if you go to the state bullying data link, y'all, it breaks it down by school, not just by district, but by school. And what you will find is hundreds of schools breaking Indiana law and masking the abuse and neglect of our children right before your eyes. Because when you look at the data, many schools are reporting zeros, some of it we shared at the meeting, or they're reporting very low numbers. So I encourage you, look up your child's school, especially if you have a child that has experienced bullying. Look up that data and see what did your school report? And I guarantee you it will floor you. What's alarming about that is when I showed this data to a local Elkhart County juvenile judge, he literally came up to me and said, I know this data is false because over 80% of the kids I see in my courtroom are because of bullying incidents at school that did not get resolved. He said 80%. So again, you really got zero tolerance for bullying. No, you got zero tolerance for fighting when you haven't addressed the bullying. And then who's going into the system and why? Don't let them bullshit y'all. As parents, don't let them bullshit y'all because
it's so hush hush. That
It
is crazy.
all of this data should be everything, all of us, the only thing all of us are talking about.
Yeah.
Honest to God, the true underbelly of what's happening in such a wealthy, resource-rich community to our children.
Another data point that stood out to me at the meeting was that the absences
Oh.
and how they're reported, right? And then how for minorities they were straight to the fifth, I think, and then at that point it would go straight to
Juvenile.
yeah. Could you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, so in Indiana, we hear a lot about absenteeism, y'all. And so essentially, if you're not familiar, either last year or the year before, legislation was passed that if a child has so many absences, we as parents can be prosecuted. No joke. Crazy how there's criminal code attached there. And something to keep in mind, because so what was passed is that if your child has more than 10 unexcused absences, your child could be referred to the juvenile system, or you could be referred to prosecution. The thing about that is that the families that we work with, when children are being bullied and have mental health issues, there's going to be absences, because that is an unhealthy environment where we are expected to send our children to. And so that's not being factored at all. So while the state went and allowed this legislation to be passed to prosecute us as parents, they aren't even addressing the fact that the schools are not addressing the bullying. Because look at the state bullying data. We have the smoking gun, y'all. The data is the smoking gun. The state bullying data shows you that there are state institutions, school systems masking the abuse and neglect of our children, period. The data is there. They all know. We've showed it to the governor. The governor knows, the attorney general knows, DCS knows, legislators know. They all know. We've all showed them. And actually, just so y'all know, the governor actually said that the governor's legislative staff said that we had so much evidence from the data and from our personal testimonies that the governor should have already done, he should have already came in and done like a referendum or something, essentially. Like he should have already came in, and they essentially said that he did not even have to do this during a legislative session. He could do this at any time. And then when we tried to put the governor and the attorney general together to say, hey, the attorney general said you should do this, they've ghosted us ever since. And so the magnitude of this is huge, y'all, because the governor knows. And that's why none of this is coincidence. This is intentional. This is systemic. This is as above, so below. The schools are doing this because they're allowed to do this. Mm-hmm. And so it's important for us to understand that as parents, that our children are being criminalized and also being left in unsafe environments, and they have full knowledge. And they're not addressing the environments, but they're passing legislation to criminalize our children and to criminalize us as parents. And so it makes no sense. I worked with a kiddo this last school year. He missed dozens of days of school because of mental health related issues. Mom called in every single time, and yet she was still being threatened with prosecution, even though we can literally show in his student record that his absences were either because of sickness or mental health related to like bullying and neglect at school. And even though all of that is documented, mom is still being threatened with prosecution. And so again, the abuse of power is massive. And so one thing you were touching on is that so essentially, Elkhart Community Schools used to have a contract with an organization called Center for Community Justice. And it's supposed to be like a restorative justice program where it is meant to be intervention before it gets to the system. It was intended to be intervention. But what we were told through people that work there is that instead of the school system referring students when they were a level 3, because say like attendance, there's 5 levels, 1 through 5. 5, you're being put into the juvenile system, like you're being referred. Mm-hmm. Okay. So essentially, they should have received referrals at like 0.3, right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't want to get the referral when they're a 5, right, because then that means they're going to go into the system. Well, what we were told by folks that were working there is that for many Spanish families specifically, because of translation issues and language barriers, they were not getting Spanish children's referrals until a level 5, which meant those kids were going straight into the system. They weren't, and literally the staff that shared this with me was like, why aren't we getting it at a level 3? Like, why are we getting it at a level 5 when they're already going into the system? Like, what the whole point of the intervention is to have the intervention to find out what's going on with the family, what's going on with the child, how can this be resolved outside of the system, but shared that they weren't getting it specifically for Spanish children until they were a level 5 because of language barriers and potential other bias and discrimination. Who knows, right? But since then, from my understanding, that they don't even have that contract anymore.
So that doesn't even, the intervention doesn't.
Yeah. So now that intervention's not even there. So now it's straight. Like now, because of cuts of resources and all the things, now I don't know of another intervention outside of, they do have like deferral programs through like specific, like it could be through like the juvenile system itself versus like a third party. But they may have other contracts now, but that was, it's one of those things still, like who's tracking that? And that's the part of this is like, we should not have had to get a special grant through the state to have this data. Every county should have this data, and imagine if they did. Really. Because when we met with the prosecutor in St. Joe County and showed him our data, I said, do you have this data? And he was like, no, we don't track that. So that's why it required a special grant, because this isn't something that our communities are tracking. But why are we trusting these institutions with our kids when they're not even tracking the outcomes of their decisions? When they're not even tracking the outcomes of the system itself. Like, what are we doing?
How will they know how to help?
Yeah, I mean, it's really scary to think about when a system gets involved, what happens from there, right? And so that's why we're here. That's why we're here as parents and as advocates, because when we try and navigate these systems and we learn these things and we find these things and we're alone, it can feel incredibly hopeless. And yeah, and just to feel that way as a parent, it does something to your soul. To feel like I can't protect my child from this, it does something to your spirit, and so what we've learned is like, we have to come together in this as parents and as community and as advocates that are willing to speak truth to power, because it will take that. And one big part of this that we've uncovered is that like a lot of youth serving organizations that we know that care about youth, they're not advocating, even though they know this truth too, because they're tied to the system. They need that grant money. They work in the schools. They're best friends with the police. I don't know. Like they're tied to systems. So even though they know this truth, and they do, they're not out here advocating because they feel that the only way they can serve is from within. And when you're serving from within, you're muzzled because you're dependent on that grant money, because you're dependent on that systemic relationship for whatever exchange that there is. We have to do this work from outside the system so it can be authentic. So we can get to the root cause, because we don't answer to anybody.
Yeah.
That's what's different. And that's what has to shift in our culture and in our community, especially here in Elkhart County, is we have to do this work from the outside in, because the inside out is corrupt. That's evident because they have the data. They know it. Why have they not put on a press conference? Why have we not said all hands on deck? Why are we not sounding the alarms?
And these things affect the minorities, as we saw a lot. why do you think that either the parents aren't there at like board meetings in more bigger numbers, or is it, do you think that they're just not aware, or they think like they don't have the power, or what do you think holds sometimes the parents from?
I mean, honestly, friend, like I went to so many board meetings and nothing ever came of it. So part of this is when you attempt to advocate, if you were met with resistance, if you were met with dismissal and gaslighting, you're less likely to show back up. You know, like that is part of this. So many of the parents that come to us, they've already done all this themselves and been shut down, and that's why they're coming to us. So, yes, there's a parent responsibility, but there's also a piece of this that as a parent on your own, say it's a school meeting, you walk in there as a parent by yourself with your child, and she and I have been there, y'all, and you got 8 people sitting across from you. Do you know how intimidating that is?
And then there's still a language barrier too. So it's like, I personally feel, and working as an interpreter with the community, a lot of immigrants will not speak up because they feel threatened in the sense of, if I say something, this could cause me to immigration being called on me, or this could cause me to go to jail, or this could cause problems for my family, or then they're going to retaliate, which it has happened. So I feel like besides the language barrier, there's all these other fears on top of everything that's going on in the news. So that's why it's like they've always stayed kind of hush hush, like in the background, like, okay, we'll let somebody else, someone like Rachel, someone who's a citizen of the United States, but obviously she can't talk for all of us.
Right.
And so it's like, if there was more people like Rachel in the community that, would stand up with her, behind her, I see where she's saying. So it's like, I feel like, and then there's also things like that I've also learned, the education level of a lot of immigrants is very low grade education. So it's like all the paperwork, it might get sent in Spanish, some of it, not all of it. And then they have to read through that. They don't understand it. You have a child who semi-understands or is going to half explain to you what they just read. And so there's another thing. It's like, so they don't understand it. The kid doesn't understand it. So they're just like, okay, I'll just wait till you get in trouble again. And it escalates because, that's just how it is, and the parent, as immigrant parents, what do they come here for? They come to work. They come, and yes, they try to educate their kids the best that they can. But unfortunately, there is a huge gap in the home, huge gap with communication. There's a huge gap. And once kids also become teenagers, they're in some of them are embarrassed or ashamed that their parents don't speak any English or don't understand or, can't defend themselves. So there's a lot of reason.
Can you explain a little bit
In
of
Spanish,
that?
I was literally gonna say,
Yeah.
literally like how the parents, right, go to the board meetings, what obstacles, hurdles do they face? What do they get faced with, like the dismissal, and all
So,
And that part, like, I just want to share, if you could hone in, that like, even those of us, I have a master's degree. It doesn't matter. Even those of us with an education can't navigate this.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So to be clear on that your education level is not the issue.
How do we assure them that if they go to these board meetings, they won't get retaliated against?
There's not. It just happened to me.
You're from here.
that?
That's what I'm saying.
But that's why we do, I think one big part of this, of what you're saying, is that we have to come together in community to do this. So like as an example, and you can share this in Spanish, essentially, like when Rio passed away, Rio's mother, Nikki, as you can imagine, as a mother, I don't even know how she was standing. You know, to lose your child, I don't know how you move after that.
Okay. Hang on.
Do that part first.
Yeah, and then I want to talk about that
here
Rio.
about surrounding.
I definitely want to talk about. I want that Rio story to get retold. Again, I think that story is very important.
What I was trying to get to in the Spanish community specifically is just like how we had to surround Nikki and be there for her because she had a lawsuit against the school and she couldn't speak. We need to also surround the Spanish mothers who maybe are undocumented and don't feel that they have the safety net to protect their children. That's where we come in, and you and I did it together, did we not?
We did.
You know, like that's what we did. We surrounded a mother that did not have the means to advocate for her child as mothers, and we showed up, and they admitted their fault. They're changing his student record. Right? But we had to surround this mother because she couldn't do it on her own. And that's what this is about. How do we surround each other? And as you shared, it is mostly mothers. But just that part, that even if you are undocumented, that's why we need to come together so we can speak for each other. Like sometimes we need to tap out and sit down. Well, then you tap in and you come, right? Like,
okay. So I'm gonna try to summarize that as best as I can, okay? Let me know if I miss out on anything. Okay, so I'm sorry, what was your name again? Félix. Una de las preguntas que hizo Félix es le hizo la pregunta a Rachel, ¿por qué crees que mucho hispano no viene a estos consejos escolares? ¿O por qué no entran, por qué no participan en estos consejos para hablar al tocante de la batalla contra el bullying, la batalla contra lo que está haciendo las escuelas? Y una de las cosas como intérprete yo he reconocido es que hay varias razones. Una, obviamente, es la barrera en el lenguaje. Otra cosa es, siento que la comunidad hispana hoy en día, bueno, ya tiene mucho rato, pero más ahora hoy en día, se siente amenazada porque por lo que está pasando con inmigración, tienen miedo que alguien se quiera vengar, o sea, que el distrito escolar se quiera vengar con ellos o quiera atacar a sus hijos o tratarlos diferentes. Otra cosa es que la información que se manda con el estudiante a casa o que envían a casa, a veces no está traducido, y si no está traducido, le piden al estudiante, mira hijo o hija, ¿me puedes traducir lo que dice aquí? Hay veces que ni el estudiante entiende lo que se mandó a casa. Así es que la traducción no está correcta. Entonces, si el padre no entiende, el hijo no entiende, entonces, ¿cómo se va a corregir la situación que están tratando de corregir en casa? Y es cómo va a poder abogar un padre si no entiende lo que está pasando con su hijo, ¿verdad? Dice Rachel, no tienes que tener una educación universitaria para poder abogar por tu hijo. No tienes que tener una inteligencia donde fuiste al colegio. O sea, abogar por tu hijo lo debes de hacer porque es lo correcto. Abogar por tu hijo lo debes de hacer porque es necesario. Otro tema que tocamos es que solamente la mayoría son madres y no los padres. Como le comenté a él, mucho inmigrante viene a este país a trabajar. Se dedica a trabajar, sí. Tienes una familia, tratas de entregarle a tu familia lo más que puedes. Pero al igual, tienes que involucrarte en lo que está pasando en la escuela con tu hijo. Tienes que abogar, tienes que preguntar, si no sabes, pregunta. Si no entiendes, pide a alguien que te explique. Hay intérpretes por todos lugares, o sea, por medio de la escuela, públicos. Si no entiendes, que te expliquen, pero no te quedes callado. Let me see what other thing did I miss. Oh, I was going to say something else important too. Shoot. También, otra cosa que también yo he reconocido como intérprete, que muchos de los adolescentes también llegan en una etapa donde quedan avergonzados porque sus padres no hablan el idioma de inglés, porque no entienden el inglés, porque tienen que traducir por ellos. Y, o sea, no hay comunicación en el hogar donde el padre, porque el hijo no se comunica, el padre dice, ok, pues lo voy a dejar así que es, y ya a ver cómo se resuelve. Y dejan todo en el aire. Cual no debe de ser así. Tiene que haber comunicación en el hogar con tus hijos. Si tú ves una diferencia en tus hijos, habla con ellos, especialmente los padres. Es importante que los hombres de la casa también hablen con sus hijos. Sus hijos masculinos o femeninos, pero hablar con ellos, porque es importante saber que son un equipo, que la familia es un equipo y todos vamos a trabajar juntos para resolver el problema que está pasando en casa, para que no se sienta negligente el hijo, no se sienta solo, no se sienta abandonado. Y todo esto es importante. Así es que como padre, el punto aquí es, the point here is, que como padre, no importa tu estado inmigratorio aquí en este país, estás abogando por tus hijos. Tus hijos son importantes, tus hijos son el futuro, tus hijos son lo que pueden desarrollar algo tan grande en este país. Pero tienes que hacer el apoyo, tienes que demostrarles que estás ahí por ellos igual. I think I said it all. I think I did.
You did awesome.
Rachel, do you want to share some of your flyers?
Yeah, so with all of this in mind, y'all, given what we've uncovered in the truth of child safety in Indiana, we launched an Indiana Child Safety Campaign. It's a call to action for the state of Indiana to be the first state in the country to make child safety our topmost priority. Essentially, we have been trying to get legislation passed since 23. We were able to get legislation passed in 23, but what we uncovered is that they don't follow the law. So we were able to get legislation passed. It's called House Bill 1483, and that requires that schools must document the bullying and abuse of our children. So that's another part of this that if you could share, if your child has been bullied or abused, the school is required to have incident reporting documentation now. And so if you've reported like 3 incidents to the school, you should be able to go in, pull your child's incident report, and all 3 of those incidents should be listed with name of offender, victim, and they would black out like the other students' information because of HIPAA, of course. But it should show victim, offender, where it happened, description, is it state reportable, not state reportable. That is something that if your child has been bullied, there should be record of it because we got the legislation passed. Like we as mothers went down and we testified and it was our legislation that we got passed, but they're not following that legislation.
Question, on here, is there an example of what it should look like? Anywhere on where they do,
Of the incident report?
yeah. Is there anywhere where they can find an example? of an incident report, that what it should look like. That way these parents are aware.
Right.
And can it be linked? Can it be?
Yeah, if you want to put that as a link,
Yeah.
we can put an example. We'll have a link to an example of what an incident report should look like. I'm glad you brought that up because when Loretta and I pulled a child's incident record at a local school, it was like in a Word document. It wasn't even an official school document, and that's what we found. And I found that in multiple districts, they're keeping like side records and not official school records. And it wasn't until we said, no, this needs to be a school documented incident report. Lo and behold, they created one. But before we came in, it was a Word document, which means it was not even part of the school system's actual documentation. It wasn't in the child's record. And so it is important to what it should look like and what should be on it, because if we wouldn't have been involved, this mother would have got this Word document that wasn't even an actual report.
And so this right here, if they share their stories, it can be in any language.
Yeah, so we launched the child safety campaign because of the gaps that we have uncovered. And while we had legislation passed in 23, the last few years our legislation has been killed by the Department of Education, by the Department of Child Services, because they don't want the checks and balances. And so we were advised that only 25% of Indiana legislators care about child safety. That was told to us by a seasoned legislator. And essentially they said, until you get more legislators to care about children, none of this is going to move. And so with that knowledge is why we launched the state campaign.
Okay, so esta es una campaña. So you created this, right, Rachel?
No, I did not.
Oh,
No,
this
this is actually a grassroots collective. We'll link it here for y'all.
Okay.
But there are actually, I think, a couple dozen now organizations involved in this.
Okay.
So
Esto es una campaña que se llama Llamada a la Acción. Va a haber un enlace para que puedas entrar a esto. Lo que dice ella es que entre más personas hablamos sobre nuestras historias y firmas, hay firmas igual asociaciones, más eso se puede... So the reason you want more signatures, more signatures, more stories, more people involved is why?
So we can push this movement across the state.
So la razón por cual queremos más personas involucradas es para que podamos nosotros empujar este movimiento, esta campaña más adelante y con más fuerza. De nuevo, un enlace va a ser agregada. Puedes agregar lo que le ha pasado a tu estudiante. Puedes firmar la petición. Y tu historia puede ser de cualquier idioma. No importa el idioma, agrégalo a lo que ha pasado contigo, lo que ha pasado con tu estudiante. Y esta petición tiene que ser firmada para el 31 de agosto de 2026.
Yeah, friends. So the campaign, there's like multiple different ways to get involved, as you were saying. Like there's a way to share your stories, and that can be in English or Spanish. It can also be anonymous, because we know that there are people that have stories to share, but they may be part of the system.
Igual tu historia puede ser anónima, no tienes que divulgar quién eres y quién es tu estudiante.
And then there are also circumstances where we have children that want to share. And so we may, depending on what they're sharing, we can also keep, children anonymous to protect them because they're minors.
Igual hay circunstancias donde una persona joven, un juvenil, gusta agregar su historia. Ellos quieren mantenerse anónimo. Eso igual se puede hacer.
And then what we'll link here for the campaign, it would be great if you could sign saying yes, like I want children to be first. I want these child safety initiatives to be first in our state.
En el enlace que se va a agregar aquí, puede usted firmar diciendo que sí, usted está de acuerdo que mi infantil lo voy a poner primero, quiero que sea primero, así para que se mueva esta campaña.
And then another part of this is we can partner. And we do have several partners in this, even within the Spanish community. Delia Mar is a partner. And then we also have Ayuda Entre Mujeres, that's a partner, and several other organizations. When you go to the actual petition, all of the logos of the partners that are part of this will be there. And so if you are an Indiana business or organization, this is a way that you can support child safety and say, yes, like I support this as an Indiana business or organization, faith-based organization. And there's a form that you can fill out that will be linked, and you submit that with your organization's logo, and then we add your logo to the state campaign, because it will take all of us to move this, y'all. And we need Indiana businesses and organizations to tell our state what we want to be a priority. Because right now, the state of Indiana, their only focus in regards to our children is the workforce. That is the only conversations being had at a state level is workforce development, not the safety and mental health of our children, but workforce development. And so with Indiana's focus being on the workforce and capitalism, imagine thousands of Indiana businesses and organizations telling the governor, no, we want this to be our number one focus in our state, not your capitalistic bullshit, right? Children's lives come before profit, period. And we have to make that statement as parents, as advocates, that we have to take the dollar signs off our children's heads because that's what we're looking at right now. Our children's bodies are dollar signs, and we have to be the one to shift this culture. So shout out to Spanish businesses and organizations that want to join. That would be wonderful.
También, para esta llamada a la acción, si gusta ser parte como una asociación, puede, igual hay un enlace donde puede, bueno, en el enlace hay un lugar donde usted puede entrar, registrar su negocio. Si quiere ser parte de esto, su logo será parte de la información que está con esta campaña. Y esto es básicamente su negocio, igual abogando, que sientes que quieres abogar por los hijos nuestros, por los adolescentes que queremos, y los niños infantiles, queremos abogar por ellos, que ellos son primero y que no solamente son, no queremos que el Estado les estén entregando dinero para experimentar con los estudiantes, sino que úsalo para beneficiar a nuestros hijos, a nuestros adolescentes, para mejorar, let's see here, no queremos so we don't want to benefit the legislation, we want to help our kids, right? We don't want to.
We're trying to pass new legislation.
We're trying to pass, okay.
That will focus on our kids.
So estamos tratando de pasar una nueva legislación que se va a enfocar en nuestros hijos.
Yeah, and so essentially we need more voices. There's power in numbers, y'all.
Esencialmente ocupamos más voces porque hay poder en más números.
Yeah. And like just a message to parents, the data speaks for itself, like there are systems in place, but those systems are not benefiting the children at all. It's not just an opinion, there's statistics to back it up. And to the systems and administrators and people in positions of power, you became, you know, like involved in school districts because you cared about children, maybe? I hope so, right?
Right?
Like what happened to caring? Message to the youth, to the kids. I know you may be in pain. I know that you may think that you know, you may be the only one seeing your pain, but you're not the only one. There's a lot of kids suffering from similar things or different things. They may just carry it differently, but you know, don't take it out on others. As an adult, you will regret it. I regretted any bullying that I may have done. I know that people my age look back and they're like, why would I do that? That's so mean. That's like so ugly. Why would I treat that person that way? Why would I insult them that way?
You're hurting.
Yeah,
Hurt people hurt people.
And
yeah.
that's facts.
And if, you know, like she said, if we're hurting, we're just gonna hurt others, you know. And that's not, it's not a good result, you know. Like,
And there's also, I think we should also add that there are suicide hotlines. There's all these different kinds of hotlines that these children can call, and not be afraid nor embarrassed to call these hotlines, to talk to someone, talk to a professional. You know, sometimes, you know, we're just, in our culture, I have noticed that when we discuss mental health, you are considered crazy. You are considered, you know, oh, it's gonna go away, or it's
Or pray.
Yeah.
Just pray.
just pray about it. You'll be fine. Some of these things you can't. You just can't. So, like, you know, Felix said, you know, it's, you are not alone. There are places you can contact. Para los padres hispanos, muchas veces en nuestra cultura, trastorno mental lo queremos esconder, nos da vergüenza, nos da pena, o queremos decir, oh, esa persona está loca, o si está tomando medicamento, esa persona está loca. Y no lo queremos hablar, solo escondemos debajo del tapete. Pero hay diferentes números, cual Felix va a agregar, donde sus hijos se pueden comunicar con personas profesionales para hablar con esa persona. Si algo les está pasando que les da pena hablar contigo como padre, o usted como padre le da pena hablar un cierto tema con su hijo, pueden comunicarse con este número, con profesionales, para que tengan esa conversación. No es algo que, trastorno mental es algo muy serio, es muy importante y existe. No importa quien no lo quiera reconocer o no, existe. Y no es algo que debemos de tapar, esconder, callar. Es un tema muy importante que se debe de hablar en nuestra comunidad hispana. Y si se requiere tratamiento profesional, lo debemos de hacer sin pena, sin vergüenza, sin juzgar. No es bonito, no es chistoso, no es agradable juzgar a una persona que está batallando con trastorno mental. Trastorno mental puede desarrollar de muchas maneras. So mental health can develop in many different ways. Ella es una trabajadora social, she's a social worker, ella te puede platicar más de eso. Yo simplemente lo hablo como intérprete que he interpretado muchísimo trastorno mental, he interpretado en hospital médico, he interpretado de todo, así es que no soy ninguna psicóloga, no soy ninguna consejera, pero sí veo que es un tema muy callado en nuestra comunidad hispana. Y es importante que si existe o sientes que existe o algo no se siente bien, hablarlo con un médico, hablarlo con un médico y no todo el tiempo tiene que ser con medicamento en tratamiento. Puede ser con un consejero, un terapeuta, puede ser con un amigo, una amiga o X cosa, pero no es bueno juzgar, no es bueno hablar mal de uno al otro, no es bueno apuntar dedos simplemente porque eres diferente.
I'm glad you gave a shout out to the kids as well, because we do have a lot of youth involved actually. And so we have a group of high schoolers that have been coming to our events on their own. Like they're actually part of a local high school student government club. And they reached out on their own and wanted to be a part of this. And actually recently at one of our child safety forums in May that we had, they shared how voiceless they felt as students within the schools, and that they were so grateful to see so many parents advocating for them because they didn't know that that was happening. And so these youth were sharing that they also feel suppressed in the schools. And there's a part of this that's really important because, you know, we all come from different walks of life. And myself personally, I come from poverty, I come from addiction, I come from abuse and child sexual abuse as well. I come from a lot of violence in my childhood. And so for me, school was safe. Like my home wasn't safe, but school was safe. And so to think about any youth that don't have either, we want y'all to know you're not alone in this. You're not alone in this because we have walked that path. And it's because we've walked that path that we're here and we're not willing to look away from what's happening. And so I want to share that because this isn't all pretty. And it's important for youth to know that don't have either, that you have community too. So I just, you could translate. So
Como dice ella, estamos igual hablando con los jóvenes. De muchas formas hemos nosotros, cada quien ha tenido una experiencia traumática. Puede ser de abuso sexual, abuso físico, abuso emocional, bullying. Pueden ver diferentes razones por cuales las personas estén batallando con diferentes traumas. Lo que más queremos que entiendan, como ella dice, ella pasó con pobreza, adicción, abuso sexual, y es por eso que ella aboga igual tanto y tiene tanta pasión sobre esto, porque lo conoce personalmente. Y queremos que entiendan, adultos, niños, jóvenes, que no estás aquí solo. No estás aquí solo. Estamos aquí para ayudarte, apoyarte de cualquier forma posible. De nuevo, van a haber enlaces que se van a agregar con esta conversación. Así para si quieres hablar con un profesional, si quieres desahogarte con alguien, no te quedes callado. Está Rachel disponible con sus servicios para hablar contigo, ayudarte en lo que ella pueda. Si no, ella tiene recursos para dónde guiarte para obtener esos servicios. Pero de nuevo, nadie estamos aquí solos. Tienes a alguien que sinceramente te quiere ver aquí y sinceramente te quiere apoyar. Así es que lo único que tienes que hacer es hablar.
You know, you touched a very good point, Rachel. A safe spot should be home for kids, but sometimes it's not. And when school isn't either, you know, it's like,
I forgot to say that.
what way can the kid look, you know, like which way,
Mm.
like, and you know, hats off to the teachers that care, hats off to the
Mm.
administrators that do, you know, because there are good people out there. I just wish there was not more, a lot more, you know, because the teacher to student ratio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, and shout out to all the kids out there, or all the adults. You know, you know who you are. You know, if home wasn't safe, you know, if you struggle in school, you know how hard it was. Don't let young kids go through the same thing. Don't let your children go through the same thing.
Otra cosa que mencionó ella, que hay veces que el espacio seguro para adolescentes infantiles es la escuela. Pero cuando el espacio de la escuela también no es seguro, no tienes seguridad en casa, no tienes seguridad en la escuela. ¿A dónde corres? Y ahí es donde se siente la soledad, se sienten atrapados, se sienten, y ahí es donde desarrolla, puede ser depresión, ansiedad, se puede desarrollar tantas cosas, y es donde igual tienes pensamientos de hacerte daño a ti mismo, lastimar a alguien o igual, bullying. Esa es otra información, que no estás solo, no eres la única persona que está batallando, donde no tienes el apoyo en la escuela, no tienes el apoyo en casa. Hay diferentes servicios disponibles.
Rachel, would you like to say any last words to the audience, to the youth, before we head out?
I think Loretta said it. But yeah, I mean, you're not alone, y'all. Like, we're in this together, and so much of this is us finding each other, you know, finding our tribe, finding our people that are willing to speak truth to power, that are willing to not back down from these hard conversations. And I think that people need to know that a space like this exists, because when we come together in community, we talk about things that other people silence. Like, we lean into that pain and that grief and that shame and that discomfort, because that's the only way to remove it. And so it's really important to know that there are sacred, safe spaces to be brave and to share your story, and to know that it doesn't need to be silenced any longer. Because so much of that lives in our bodies, and we need spaces where people want to witness our truth, and we're here for it. We're here for all of it, the good, bad, the ugly, because we need that to heal. We need that to grow and to change as people and as community, and that's what we're about, y'all. So this is more of our community.
Amen.
Amen, for sure.
No, and it's great because, like you said, you find your people, and it's amazing feeling when you find people that care like you care, and that are willing to act, you know, and speak up. And I encourage those that want to, that are timid or shy, you know, you can do it. We can do it.
And there's many ways to get involved, you know, like we all have, you know, talents and strengths. There's so many ways to volunteer. Like, that's how Loretta's like, girl, let me translate. Come on, girl. You know, like, there's different ways that we can help each other through navigating these systems that want to keep us isolated, that want to keep us divided. Only in coming together do we unite and bridge that and create something different together. And so much of it is leaning into that and showing up. But there's so many ways to get involved, even if you're not somebody that wants to speak. And for the record, I don't know about you, but she and I are like a ball of nerves, because this is not something, we're doing this because our hearts are here.
Yes.
And we are called to do it. Anyone that knows me knows that the microphone is the last place I want to be. But I'm called to be here because once you learn these truths, once you see the data, once you know, how do you look away?
Exactly.
How do you look away? And if you can, you're not our people, and that's cool too.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's really,
I mean, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay too. You do you, boo, but
yeah.
we're gonna be, taking care of shit.
I think I think that's why it's really important to put this information and this data out there, so people can see it, people become aware, and we'll do the best we can in doing that and spreading the word and spreading, what the reality of the children experience and are living.
And this will be the first of many, and so truly, definitely leave comments, or if there's things you want us to cover or talk about, these are things that we want to have continued conversation, right? And so definitely leave comments. If there's certain areas that you want to focus on, we would be down to do that, I'm sure, because we know, again, while today we focused a lot on bullying and the school to prison pipeline, we know that DCS, child welfare, is its own system, the family court system, the healthcare system. If there are things that have impacted you that you want us to speak on, we would be open to do that as well. So
yeah, definitely leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a very special and profound episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time. Thank you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
yeah.
I am shaking.
Damn
No,
thing, girl.
girl. Like this is like,